Hello. We're gonna wait a minute or so, and we've got Chloe, fabulous Chloe from Sorry About the Mess, mum of 3, blogger, photographer, all-round Wonder Woman. Thanks so much, Chloe, for joining.
I'm excited. The first Facebook Live.
Yeah, and us too. This is the first Tranquil Facebook Live.
Exciting.
Yeah, so thanks so much for being on. And today we're talking about motherhood. And obviously you are a mum of 3.
Yeah,
Chloe.
I am.
So how did you find that first transition into motherhood? How did that come about?
Well, it was a bit of a whirlwind. I was 24 and found out that I was pregnant, and it was unexpected. I wasn't living with my partner at the time. We were like living with friends, just like having a great time in London. So literally overnight, it was going from one lifestyle to another, and sort of kind of processing along the way, and the processing kind of process has taken quite a long time. It's sort of still ongoing, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't kind of the most traditional transition, I guess.
And actually, there are transitions again, aren't they? Because you went from having 1 and now you've got 3.
Yeah.
So how do you find being a mum of 3?
Really good, actually. I'd say that 0 to 1 was the biggest transition. 1 to 2 was kind of a juggling act, and yeah, there was a good few months where I was getting used to that. And then 2 to 3 has just actually been really lovely, because there was no transition. I kind of felt like I knew exactly what I was dealing with. I wasn't worried, because I think when you go from 1 to 2, you worry a bit about like, how am I going to find enough love for another child? And how is my eldest? You have that guilt of like, oh, he or she's going to be on their own, like, you know, but I have to split my time, and it's just such a worry. And then when you've done that once and you go in for a third time, for me, I already knew that everyone would adjust, and after a few months they wouldn't even remember a time before the youngest was here. And I just really enjoyed the newborn stage with my third, because I felt experienced, I felt confident, and it was literally just really, really nice just to be able to appreciate him, appreciate how quickly it all goes. And 3 has not for me been any more difficult than 2.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because I know people do say that, don't they? Say the transition between 0 and 1 child is like, whoa, what just happened? Like I knew what was going on, and then and then people go, actually 1 to 2 is quite a big leap, because like you say, it's that juggle. How will I find time? You get that guilt, and you have that kind of, oh, what am I going to do with 2 children? And how am I going to stretch myself at 2? But you actually feel that maybe for you, like going into 3 just becomes easier because you kind of know that juggle.
Yes, definitely. And I feel like I finally found my flow with like parenting, with being a mum. So obviously when I had my first, that wasn't planned, I wasn't ready to be a mum. And that took a good few years to kind of get used to. And then by the third, it's like I'm fully in the flow of being a mum, and I'm just enjoying it now.
I can imagine that, actually, because I think that is the same for a lot of us. It's like that first time, like, what am I actually doing? What was how do I actually go from being a woman, just me, into being a mum? But actually the confidence builds up over time, doesn't it? And you get used to
your redefined self.
And do you find the routines get easier and they slot in easier as time's gone on as well?
Yeah, for sure, because with your first, I think everyone goes through that phase of, oh, I can't go out in the evenings as easily anymore. And then by the time now with the third, it's like we have our routine down. I don't sort of miss that lifestyle of being out. I quite like the kind of slow, quiet time of just like family time at home. And I've got 2 elder ones, so whatever the routine is, I'm going to be led by them. So having a third baby toddler in the mix, it just literally, for me, it hasn't changed a thing. It hasn't made us feel busier. I think in the first month it was like, oh, my hands are a bit more full and I've got a concentrating child and a newborn, and but then you get used to that really quickly, or I did anyway.
Yeah, and you kind of know what's coming too, don't you? Because the first time, everything is new. Each transition is like, oh, you're eating food now, and oh, you go to the toilet now, and and then actually, by the time you have your second and third, you sort of know, even though each child is individual, you sort of know what's coming up, don't you? I guess.
Yeah. But you're right, they are all individual.
Yeah.
It's different experiences with each of them.
And was it a different birth experience with each of them as well?
Yeah, actually. So my first was a hospital birth, mainly because I wanted to go into it with like completely broad options. I wanted the pain relief if I needed it. I didn't need it in the end, apart from gas and air. But it was, I think, 17 hours of labour. It felt like a proper marathon. I was so proud to get through it by the end. And I think I was lucky with my midwife and the kind of support and things. And then my second, I decided to have at home, because once I'd been through the first birth, and I don't really like hospitals. I never feel very comfortable in them. They're so hot. And I just thought, I used to get stressed out about, well, what if I can't have the room at the pool, or what if, so I thought, well, I'll just be at home. I can control
solves
the
all those
environment.
problems.
And that kind of went smoothly, sort of. He got a little bit stuck at the pushing stage, but he came out in the end. So. And then my third, I planned to have a home birth. And then I got obstetric cholestasis at 36 weeks, which is the itchy condition, which is like something to do with your liver. I can't remember the science behind it.
I had the same actually in my first pregnancy, and it's so I think the bile is entering the blood, which is what causes and it's not just sort of normal little itch. It's like you want to just be scratching at that skin, and it comes on often later in pregnancy, so towards the end of the third trimester, especially when you're feeling already like you're probably ready to give birth by that stage, and on top of that you get this itching under the skin, which is, it's like in your skin, isn't it?
And palms, I think it was palms and the feet. Because I mentioned to my midwife, I was like, I've been a bit itchy. This was from about 30 odd weeks, and she said, if it's not that bad, it's probably fine, but if it's on your palms, then let me know. And then 36 weeks it was on my palms, my feet. And then I went in for the blood test, and they didn't let me leave after that. They said, you're going to be, because I was 37 weeks the next day, so they said, we'll induce you tomorrow. So that was a bit of a whirlwind. I hadn't packed anything, so I had to get my partner to go around, and I was texting him saying, you get this and this, and obviously he bought a load of stuff that was wrong, maybe for me to wear. I can only imagine, Chloe, what was in that bag.
So you didn't have your hospital bag packs then?
Didn't have my hospital bag packs, no.
Would that be a tip?
The home birth.
Would that be something you don't
actually? My tip would be, no matter how many times you've done this, don't get complacent, and at least have the essentials packed. I mean, I think my thing was when I'm 37 weeks, that's when I'll pack it, and I wasn't quite 37, so. But I definitely felt a bit silly that I'd kind of been so complacent about it when I was suddenly in hospital, and it all happened so quickly. It's as far as his birth. I was induced with him, which took 5 days. So I was in hospital for 5 days, which was really boring.
Would you, if you're happy to, would you be happy to talk about the steps that you went through for your induction? Because I know some people watching, and hello, thank you very much for joining. Some people might be kind of preparing for birth and might be interested in how that works. Would that be all right?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, when I was in hospital, there was literally nothing to do. So I just sat there Googling positive induction stories, because I was so terrified, because all I'd ever read was avoid intervention. You'll go on a path where it all goes downhill. If you have one intervention, it will snowball. And so I just was so worried about it that I just Googled to find anything I could that was kind of I went in, had a pessary, and then it was all fine from there. So yeah, I'm really happy to talk about the steps.
So you went 7 days.
I gave birth to him on the 6th day.
Okay.
Yeah, so almost a week. Not quite. I don't know if there's a record for like longest induction, but
what are your tips if someone's going in for an induction and you weren't planning to go in for that, but sometimes people kind of know that, you know, perhaps on the day they're going to go in. So if you were going to go in for a planned induction, what would be your tips for things to take or do, or?
Well, I would say just mindset wise, you never know how it's going to go. So you don't want to think, oh, I'm going to go in today and this is the day I'm going to give birth, because it might be a longer process. Equally, it might go very quickly. But what I would say is taking things to kind of take your mind off it and sort of entertain you, just in case it is a bit of a long process. And just kind of keep, same as like when you write your birth plan, and you always kind of keep it fairly open. Same with an induction, keep your mind open to all the possibilities of how long it might take or how quick it might be.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And actually, Jenny's just asked, did the midwives communicate to you how long the induction could take? So when you went in, did you kind of know, did you have an expectation of what the process might be for you?
They didn't really communicate that because I think they've seen all sorts of inductions, so they can't really give you any promises. I was under the impression that it would be quicker than it was. I thought I'm going to have a baby tomorrow. But it took longer. So not really.
So you weren't really, so no one said actually you could be here for a week?
No, I mean, because it was my third, they all seemed to think that I would go quickly. They said, well, your body knows what to do, you've had 2 vaginal births before, we just need to start you off. And then one of the most annoying things was when the midwives would change shifts, and then in the morning the same one would come back that had been there the day before, and they would be so surprised to see me still there. And they, I think at one point they were probably taking bets on like how long, or it felt like that.
Yeah.
They were like, you're going to go, stay, like really positive about it. And then they'd be like, oh, you're still here, like 12 hours later.
Yes. And then actually that repeats, doesn't it? And then you come back the next day and it's like, you're there and you're there. How did you find that? Were you able, because you said you were quite relaxed in terms of expectation, but because that, you also said that's your third child, so you sort of knew that there might be a process, but it's your first induction. How did you kind of find ways to either keep yourself, I know you were Googling, but entertained, or in that frame that it wasn't, you weren't sort of, and did you actually, the question should be, did you manage to find a way to keep yourself, those mental expectations managed?
I don't feel like I did very well with it, to be honest. In hindsight, which is really easy to say, I kind of wish that I had stayed more positive. I got quite pessimistic after 5 days.
Yeah, I think after 5 days, I can understand that. Yeah.
So the one thing I did was I wrote like positive kind of affirmations on my notes on my phone, and I'd kind of keep referring to those and just be like, I'm going to meet my baby soon. We're safe in the hospital. They're monitoring me every 4 hours, because it was a scary situation as well, because the reason they induce is because of the risk to the baby. So this whole time, this long 5 days, you're just sat there thinking, you know, what could go wrong? You know, I just want my baby safely. So it was difficult to stay positive, and you're on the antenatal ward, so you're constantly surrounded in the bays by people who are progressing more than you. You're hearing the sounds of labouring women. You're not particularly getting an amazing rest because it's noisy at night. So all of that combined is difficult. And then the midwives keep telling me, you know, trust your body, it's going to happen. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, you're right. But I'm also like, God, stop saying that, because it's not happened. But in hindsight, once it all did happen, and it happened very quickly, at that point, I just wish that I'd kept some of that positivity that I went in with, and I think that would have helped me a bit better, all in all.
And it is actually really hard, isn't it? Because actually what you're trying to process is something where you have that expectation, you have concern, because that's why you're there, but you have not just the emotional fatigue, there is that physical fatigue, like you're saying, 'cause you're not getting rest, you're not at home, you're not surrounded by the things that you feel really comfortable with, and you're not sleeping great at night because you're on a ward with other people. So actually it's really hard, not just on the kind of emotional, I want to meet my baby, let's do this. It's that physical, okay, we're still here, and we're still here, and I'm still needing to do this, and I've still got this process ahead of me.
You're gearing up for that marathon, and every day you're there, you're more exhausted, and you're thinking, can I physically do this? But I don't want to sound really pessimistic. It was, all those thoughts were in my head at the time, but then the actual experience was okay.
But it was that process. But actually, I think there's some really good tips in that, and that actually there's something that isn't always spoken about, is it? The length of time inductions can take, and what you can do to try and kind of keep yourself in your own space. Emily said, did they give you the option of being in the midwife-led unit at all, or did they automatically put you in the labour wards when you were? Yeah,
unfortunately they didn't. I really, I tried to fight for it, because obviously I wanted a home birth at first, and then the next best option would be the midwife-led unit. But because of the obstetric cholestasis, they wanted me to be hooked up to the monitor constantly once I was in labour. So I wasn't allowed to go in the midwife-led unit. To be honest, I didn't fight it that much. And I think, I mean, you're the person giving birth. If I had said, it's here or I go home, they probably would have let me. But I was concerned for my baby, and I kind of wanted the monitoring and just wanted to play by the rule book. So.
And you needed to feel safe, actually. You needed to feel secure about what was going on. So that also felt like an okay option for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, there was an element of coming to terms with the loss of control. Like I did feel like I didn't have much say, and you get the doctor coming around you get the midwives doing your observations. The doctor comes around once a day to sort of decide what the next step of induction is going to be, and no one's really, I found, talking to me as a person. They're just sort of examining you, and they're going, right, so we'll do a gel at this time, and then they talk to each other, and you're kind of on that path of intervention where they don't say, how do you feel about this? The language around it I found quite hard. That no one was saying, oh, if it's okay with you, this is what we're going to do. Or then they made all the decisions for me, especially when it comes to breaking my waters. They held off. This is why it took so long to induce me, because they said, well, you've had 2 births before, so we'll do the gels and you'll probably go just with those. And then in the end they had to break my waters, and if they'd done that at first, I probably would have gone a lot faster. But no one said to me, would you prefer we did all the gels, or would you prefer we did this? It was just kind of all these decisions were made for me. And there was a massive sense of I've lost control of all my birthing decisions, which I hadn't had before with my other births.
And actually that is one of the things in a way with the induction, and I know other people have sort of spoken about this as well, is that there isn't always that communication, because actually that body is still yours, and you're still going to need to give birth, and you're still very much part of that process. But because you're there for perhaps a reason, sometimes I think that process is lost, and the woman in that birth can be lost. And just like you say, that communication, because actually you know your body best sometimes, or you have your own kind of intuition about what's probably going to work for you. So is it okay if I just clarify the steps they took in your induction? So they gave you the gel, the pessary.
Before the gel, they did the tablet pessary.
Then you had the prostaglandin gel.
And
then
I think it was 3 rounds of gel. I had the full, like the maximum they let you have.
Which
I think is 3.
I think it's 3 rounds. And then, so that took how many days? If you don't mind me asking, because I think it's just really good to give a timeline sometimes.
So I had the first tablet one on the day after I was admitted to hospital. So technically I call it day 1, because the first day I went in the evening. So day 1. Then they had a little disagreement between them and decided that they'd just wait and leave me, and they wouldn't start the gels. So I had like a day and a half where literally nothing happened. And then the 3 gels over the course of, I think, a day or 2. I can't remember what the spacing is. Is it like 6 hours?
I think it's within 24. 24 hours.
So I had those, and then they left me again to see if it would do anything. and then day 5 or day 6, whichever day I eventually gave birth to him, was the day that they broke my waters.
So that was the thing. So then you had membranes ruptured, and then you actually went into spontaneous labour.
By the 3rd gel, I was niggling, and I spent most of that night on the birthing ball, being like, I need to keep moving, because I really didn't want them to break my waters. I was really scared that I wouldn't like that. So I just really wanted to go as naturally as possible. But then I got to the point where I was like, if I don't lie down, I'm going to be so knackered. I have to get through this. And then I lay down, and then the contractions stopped. But the waters breaking, I went straight into kind of established labour contractions from that point, and he was born within it was under 2 hours.
So that's quite quick, actually, from that point into having a baby. Really, and that can be quite intense too, can't it?
It was very intense. It was the least controlled of all my labours. Again, I used to think, because my first took 17 hours of active labour, and that was hard to get through. And I'm quite impatient when I'm in labour. And I'd just be like, I'm only 5 centimetres, it's going to take ages. And I used to think that I wanted a quick birth. And after having a quick birth, I would take the longer birth, because in the longer birth, my body was doing its thing at its natural pace. Whereas in the quicker birth, I think I was probably overstimulated by all the gels and all the intervention, that by the time my body actually went, oh, we're doing this, are we? It was all a bit too fast, and it was interesting.
And how did you feel afterwards? Because Jenny's asked that too, like having that sort of birth experience, and when you got home and had your baby, did it feel that affected you, or did you find that transition actually, that was a process you've been through, and you were now straight into that kind of mother?
I mean, the instant he was born, I was like, wow, I can't believe, after 5 days of nothing, I can't believe that happened so quickly. And I was just so happy. I was so happy it was over and that he was here. And I went home straight from the delivery room. I was like, I'm not spending 1 second more on this, going home. And I think I remember having a debrief with my midwife before she signed me off.
And they did give you a debrief, but that's great.
Well, it was my home, because I was with the home birth team. So my home birth midwife came and did all the, she wasn't able to be there for the labour, but she did come and do all the aftercare. So I felt like I had sort of a confidence in her that I could say, this didn't quite go how I thought it was going to. And I was, I mean, it was scary. It did scare me. And to think of having another labour, if I was ever to have more, that would be something I would have to, I think, debrief a bit more. Because to go into that situation again, it makes me feel apprehensive.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably something also to do with kind of loss of control and the process, and like you said, the kind of language and all the things that sort of removed you from being the centre of that experience, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's the loss of control, definitely, because I felt like with my other 2 labours I had an idea of what was going to happen, and it's taught me a lot. It's taught me that you can get to your 3rd labour and have such a completely different experience. And I know that if that had been my 1st labour, I would have felt a lot of guilt there, that I would have put the guilt on me. I'd be like, this is my fault. I wasn't able to do it the way I thought I would. But because it's my 3rd, I'm in that privileged position that I can just say that that's one labour, this is another labour, and that happened because of a specific set of circumstances. And it wasn't because I couldn't handle it, or, you know, I gave up on my plan. So there is that saving grace.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, you know, I often say labour is like putting your hands in a tombola. You know, you really don't know what you're going to get. And I think that's, you know, to have, and when you're talking about that, I can really see that, you know, a 3rd experience where you really feel like, I've got this thing down, and everyone tells you you've got this thing down, and actually it can unfold in just different ways, because, you know, your babies are different. Just, it's random, and we don't know how or why some things are going to happen. And I think that's why, you know, you talking about the kind of tools you're using and putting out there what happens is just really useful for other women who are about to go through a process, or thinking about processes, to think, just to get information, actually, just to kind of talk about how it can unfold. And Emily said, how did you keep your strength up for that amount of time? Could you eat? Did you manage to eat?
I did eat, yeah. That was one of the only things there was to do. So yeah, I made sure I was well rested, well fed. I read a couple of awful books. Yeah, it was a slog. It was, yeah.
And I'm going to switch the subject a little bit, if that's all right, because I would like to ask you, because you are a blogger and a photographer and all-round wonderful creative lady, and I wonder how you find managing those sort of different hats, those different roles, because I know as a mum, and I'm sure other mums and dads know, that parenthood, motherhood is pretty all-consuming at times, and 3 children is, you know, it is. You've got time-consuming role to play, and then on top of that, you've got a very creative role. How do you manage that? What are the things that have you got kind of like cheats, or I don't know, what are your top tips, or what's your experience?
Well, my experience now, if you'd asked me this 3 or 4 years ago, my experience now is going to be different because third child in, I'm finally at a place where we've been able to afford childcare for him 2 days a week, so I have scheduled time now, which is like a new thing, and obviously that's great, and that's when I try and do most of my work. But 3-4 years ago, we couldn't afford childcare, so it was literally juggling children and trying to do other stuff, which wasn't ideal, but sometimes that's the only way it can be. So I just worked in really short bursts. I do as we were discussing before, the 10-minute kind of see how much you can do in 10 minutes. Just set a stopwatch, start a task, because otherwise you just never start anything because you look at the task and you think this is too much. I can't, I don't know how to start tackling this. So I do a lot of that, a lot of working on weekends. So again, not ideal because we never really had solid family time with their dad, because it felt like he'd take them on the weekends, I'd take them on the weekdays, and that's how we kind of got by. And I mean, the creativity, finding time to be creative has been like one of my biggest balancing challenges in motherhood. Because before kids, you don't even have to think about it. If you want to sit down and write, you get the urge to kind of write something, you just do it whenever. After kids, it's like I have after they go to bed, and mine were terrible sleepers, so they'd wake up throughout the evening, so I didn't even have that time. Or it's wake up earlier than them to do it. And sometimes
so it's one form of exhaustion after it. Like it's either you're going to be tired at night, or you're going to be tired in the morning.
And then when your brain's tired, you aren't as creative. Because you're just numb.
Well, you're sort of in survival in a way, aren't you?
Exactly. So that was always really difficult. And generally, I'd get the urge. I'd have an idea, and I'd be like, I want to write this down. But I'd have to say, well, that's going to have to wait, because I can't just pause everything and do this right now. And a lot of the time as well, I've always wanted to do creative things, whether it's taking pictures, writing. It's always been something that I've wanted to do. But a lot of the time it's just hobby stuff. It's not stuff that's even earning me money. So it becomes really hard to say to my partner, oh, can you just watch the kids? Because I just want to do this really self-indulgent thing. It's not cleaning the house. It's not doing something that's going to benefit all of us. It's literally just what I want to do. So over the years, I've got a lot better at just kind of, for my own well-being, being like, this is what I enjoy. This is me. So I need that time. However it comes, I need that time for me.
Like an act. It's almost like an act of self-care in a way as well, isn't it? It's like that's your downtime. Actually, Jenny said, did you find the creativity can help with kind of like the stress of parenthood?
Yeah, definitely. I'd be lost without my creative outlets, because it's my hobby. It's what I'm interested in. And also I find that even though I have less time to be creative, I'm more creative now that I'm a parent, because my kids are they're my inspiration for a lot of things. It's like, if I want to make a video, I'm going to pick up the camera because I want to capture them. I want to, I'm driven to sort of note down the moment and have that forever. So, I look back to before I had kids and I was like, well, what was I taking photos of?
How many pictures do you have of your kids on your camera, do you think, Chloe?
On my computer.
Oh, yeah.
That is, I don't know, not millions, somewhere in the thousands and millions, kind of in between there. But I need to sort. That's another job, isn't it? You need to sort through them and like get rid of the ones you don't need to keep.
Yeah, that's another admin job for
like I'll do it in 20 years. I'll do it when I'm retired.
Absolutely, that's one that you kind of look at, not when you've got 10 minutes.
Yes.
And Emily was saying, how did you cope with leaving your little ones at nursery? Because she's going back to work in a week, and it is there's the emotion around that, isn't it, as you're finishing that period of time.
I mean, I feel quite lucky that because it wasn't an option for so long, that by the time it came to doing it for my third, I just really appreciated it. And I was like, this is my time, he's having fun. And I think that's a big thing, is there's a teething period, there's a settling period, but then they start to have fun. They do really cool things. They do things that I don't have time to do with them. They do painting, they go on outings. So it's good for everyone. And I think you just have to be kind to yourself and like accept that there will be a teething period, and you know, you're not feeling comfortable about it, and that's completely natural. But once you see them settle, you will feel more happy about it.
And do you find, like, I found this a little bit as well, is like when I'm in something, I was all in it, and I couldn't really imagine going to do something else. So when I was on maternity, the thought of going back to work totally felt emotional, overwhelming. I just couldn't see how that would happen. And I totally agree with you. There was that time, and for us, I think it probably took about 6 weeks, maybe, like to really get through that, to see everyone sort of settle. And like you say, sort of, my expectation was that it was going to feel difficult. But then, I don't know if you find this, once you're in another routine, it's sort of like, that's the routine I'm in now. And that seems to find its own flow.
I think it's like all things with parenting. Every time you come onto a new stage, you feel like this is such a big change. Like, say, from when they go from milk feeds to suddenly weaning and eating solid food, you can't get your head around it. And then 2 weeks after you started, you're like, well, that wasn't a big deal. It's just happened. It's one of those, isn't it?
It is. And it's really hard to, because it is so, that especially that time in maternity is so consuming, because you've been on that journey, haven't you? And I think especially with the first, it does, that change coming does bring up a lot. And I think it's good to know that that is a period that you do come through, and it does settle down. Even though it doesn't necessarily make that transition feel like easier, it does get through, and you do kind of get into a new routine and a new phase.
Definitely.
So we kind of come to our time, so we said we're going to steal you for 30 minutes, but if you're all right, if anyone has any burning last questions around any work, motherhood, anything, even, you know, that amazing lip colour that you're wearing today, Chloe, I
don't even know what this one is. Sorry.
Beautiful. Really like that one. And so if we could finish, maybe going to put you on the spot. If you were to have your your 3 top things that you would say are the best things about motherhood, what would you say they are?
Ooh, I find these questions really difficult.
I know, sorry, I should have told you.
I hate having to, like, it's the pressure of having to have a definitive answer, like 3 things. The 3 things that I love about motherhood. I mean, I can only really speak for, like, overall how I feel now. And obviously, if you've been watching this from the beginning, where we talked about how I had an unplanned start into parenthood, and it took years to feel settled as a mum, and then the last couple of years I found my stride, and I feel just completely happy and sort of at peace, and we have so much fun as a family. I really enjoy all of my boys. I love us as a family. They kind of give me so much joy. So it's all of those things. I don't know whether I could pick like 3 aspects of motherhood, but it's just the whole kind of journey and the sort of where we've arrived at now. And I just, considering I have this like start to, I mean, it's not the end now, but this kind of from our starting point, I just, feel grateful that I feel so kind of settled and happy now.
That's really
in
lovely.
motherhood.
Yeah, and thanks so much for sharing that. And I think that's a really lovely point to kind of to end on, because actually that transition from being a woman where we're working, we're doing all our stuff or whatever we want, and then we go through that transition of having our first child, and then, you know, that can extend into family life, and it can feel like we're through one transition through another, but it can be enjoyed, and actually get to a place where it's really enjoyable and it feels settled. And I think that's a really lovely space to be in. And actually it sounds like you're getting that balance with that family life and bringing that lovely sense of Chloe, that womanhood, into your work, and keeping that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, so thanks so much, Chloe.
It's okay.
And yeah, thank you everyone who's joined. Thank you so much. It's been, and for your questions, it's been really lovely. This was our first guest live, so really felt like we nailed some motherhood stuff here. Thanks so much. And if you are interested in seeing more of Chloe's stuff, I'm going to post a link to her blog in the comments below. And if you do have questions, Chloe, are you happy to comment on any questions people leave and carry on answering them over the next few days too? So thanks so much all. Enjoy the rest of your evening and see you soon. Bye.